So we have the ratings and viewership in for this week's episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV, and it's certainly very interesting because, of course, last week's episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV did a really strong number, the best number since Kenny Omega's debut in December, which of course was the record number for Impact Wrestling at the time as well. So certainly there was a lot of interest and fascination as to what this week would entail, because the week prior to last week, 2 weeks ago, that number didn't do very well coming out of Hard to Kill. A lot of people said maybe that was because they didn't announce a lot on that show, but it certainly was a very noteworthy show because you had the debuts of Matt Hardy, or return of Matt Hardy, Private Party, Tony Khan appearing in person, the return of James Storm, which led to last week's being a very strong number. So what did we see this week? Wow, it's certainly very interesting because Tuesday's episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV declined in overall viewership, but it did hold up in the 18 to 49 demographic. Now, Impact Wrestling this week averaged 173,000 live viewers on AXS TV on Tuesday night. Now, as I mentioned, this was down from last week's average of 186,000 live viewers, which, as I mentioned, was the best number since the Kenny Omega debut back in December, which was the record number on AXS TV. But in good news, I suppose, in contrast, the rating in the 18 to 49 demographic held steady at a 0.05 rating. In terms of the overall ranking on cable, Impact Wrestling ranked 125th for the night on cable in the 18 to 49 demographic. Last week's episode ranked 118, so a decline there as well. As previously noted, this week's show was headlined by Impact World Champion Rich Swann teaming up with his no-surrender opponent Tommy Dreamer against the TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose and a former contender Chris Bay. As I mentioned, Swann will defend his Impact World Championship against Tommy Dreamer at No Surrender later this month. No Surrender is airing on Impact Plus on Saturday, February 13, the day before NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day. So what a busy weekend we're going to have there. Now, as I mentioned several times in the video so far, last week's episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV drew the best viewership for Impact since the December 8th episode, which of course was the night that AEW World Champion Kenny Omega made his first appearance on Impact Wrestling. So, there's a lot to break down there. I think Impact overall, they'll still be relatively happy with that number, I think, frankly. You had the Kenny Omega debut episode, because I think it's important to compare these situations and try and break them down. You had the Kenny Omega debut episode, December 8th, 221,000 live viewers. Very successful for Impact Wrestling. Highest number they'd ever done on AXS TV. In addition to that, their Twitch numbers quadrupled or even larger than that night as well. They did big business across social media on YouTube and on Twitter and Facebook too, so they were very happy with that. That number obviously is not sustainable for Impact Wrestling, I don't think. It's very difficult to drive that interest every single week, and they're always going to be limited by the access to AXS TV that people don't have across the United States to watch it live. So the following week after that, after the Kenny Omega debut episode, was 177,000 live viewers on AXS TV. That number was better, or essentially pre-pandemic numbers. So Impact Wrestling still right now are doing pre-pandemic numbers, because the difference between that week after the Kenny Omega debut and this week is 3,000 live viewers, which is essentially nothing. I know in the grand scheme of Impact, when you've got around 200,000 live viewers each week, 3,000 live fans is a lot. But my point being, they're still doing pre-pandemic numbers, so they'll be very happy about that. I think in terms of the rating, they'll be very happy with that in terms of this demographic, because when you had that Kenny Omega debut episode back in December, the 221,000 live viewers, the rating for that show was a 0.08 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic. The following week, when we saw that decline into 177,000 live viewers, we saw a big decline in the 18 to 49 demographic in the rating, because we saw a 0.04. This week, you got the 0.05 rating, which is the same of what they had last week. And I think that's really important, because yes, they had a decline in overall viewership. Things are very fluid like that when it comes to pro wrestling viewership, frankly. Some weeks they do go up, some weeks they do go down. But in terms of keeping that key demographic, I think they'll be very happy with that. Ultimately, we can talk about ratings all we want when it comes to Impact Wrestling on AXS TV. They're always, as I mentioned, they're always going to be limited by the availability of AXS TV. That's always going to be the problem. It's always going to be the problem. If you look at it year on year, for the life of me, I can't remember who did it, but on one of the videos when we were speaking about the Impact ratings, someone posted an amazing comment where basically they showed year on year since about, I think it was about 2013, 2014, they showed year on year how Impact Wrestling had done in the ratings. And obviously, once they left Spike TV, it was a massive hit to them. Not only financially, in terms of having the license fees and the rights fees from Spike TV, but in terms of the viewership. when they went from Spike TV to the next network, which was at Destination America. I think they've had so many. They went to Destination America. They dropped something like 70% of their viewership, which is, yeah, at the time it was nearly catastrophic, frankly, for Impact Wrestling. And that drop continued when they went to the Pop Network and now AXS TV. That decline will continue. The thing that Impact do have going for them right now is financially, they're arguably as steady as they've ever been. Are they as profitable as they've ever been? That's an interesting question, because there's a difference between profit and revenue, of course. Are they bringing in the most revenue than they ever have? Absolutely not. They're not, because those license and rights fees that they were getting from Spike TV, and they were doing live events, albeit not totally successfully, but they were generating some decent revenue for TNA back in 2010, 2008 kind of time. But in terms of profit, you could probably argue that Impact Wrestling right now is as profitable as it's ever been. Why? Because the overheads aren't exactly huge. They're on a network which is owned by their parent company. Anthem is a very wealthy company. They're pretty well financially backed as well. And I think if in terms of looking at the ratings, if we can move it back to the ratings, I think they'll be happy. They'll be happy because they're doing essentially pre-pandemic numbers. Around sort of the 160, 170,000 mark is where they were doing pre-pandemic. Obviously, once the pandemic hit last March, like with television in general, they took a massive hit. But because of this AEW relationship, they're kind of back to where they were doing, where they were at before. And we're still in the midst of this pandemic right now. So they'll be very happy with that, I would think. My concern would be with Impact right now, and I've mentioned this a couple of times before when we've spoken about the ratings for Impact, is this is a period of time where you have a lot of fresh eyeballs on the product, more than you ever had previously, I think, in terms of the recent eras of Impact Wrestling, in the sense that this AEW relationship, you know, the discussion about how effective it has been or successful it has been for Impact Wrestling can rage on, and it will continue on. The only best way to judge it will be in probably a couple of years' time to see where Impact are at that period of time. But my concern would be that right now you do have more eyeballs on the product than you may have had previously because of this AEW crossover. You have more eyeballs and people that maybe hadn't watched Impact Wrestling in a while, or people that are new to watching Impact Wrestling. They're only a fan of AEW. They've only, you know, there might be some younger wrestling fans that just have never got into watching Impact Wrestling or anything like that. Because of this AEW relationship, albeit not that much on AEW Dynamite, you are being told, as a fan of All Elite Wrestling, to watch Impact Wrestling on Tuesday nights, because you're seeing the Impact Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, appear on Dynamite on Beach Break this week. You're seeing an Impact Wrestling star in James Mitchell, Father James Mitchell, officiate the wedding between Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford. You're seeing this Impact Wrestling influence on the show, which is telling you, as an AEW fan, you should probably watch Impact Wrestling on Tuesday nights on AXS TV. If you like this kind of stuff, maybe you should watch Impact on Tuesdays. Furthermore, then you then see the paid advertisements by Tony Khan, which are very popular on social media. You're also seeing Matt Hardy and Private Party appear on Impact Wrestling on Tuesday nights. You're being told as an AEW fan, you should probably tune in. You should probably tune in to watch Impact on AXS TV because it's a good show and big things are happening over there. My concern would be about this, my long-winded point here, is that we have No Surrender coming up on February 13, and as I've mentioned time and time again, my concern there is a main event like Rich Swann versus Tommy Dreamer really what you want to be doing right now? Is that going to be bringing the viewers in? Is that going to be, and more importantly, is that going to be keeping the viewers that have jumped over from AEW? And I think the answer there is no. I think the answer is no. This is a really crucial point for Impact, I think, and that you need to, these new viewers coming over, you need to get them to stay. And you get them to stay by delivering a very good product, and I think Impact's products has always been pretty good. For the last 2-3 years, it's been very, very good. But recently they've made steady improvements to the show, I think. You know, the criticisms during the pandemic would be, well, there's no crowd, it can feel very stale, very bland. They've added the crowd noise. I know some people don't like it. Personally, I do think it helps the product quite a bit. Some people before complained about the announce team, said that they didn't like the announce team. Josh Matthews is incredibly polarizing. And Madison Rayne, some people didn't think she was up to snuff in terms of the ability in being an announcer. That's changed. Matt Stryker's now on commentary. D'Lo Brown's on commentary. I think that's an upgrade as well. So they're making these upgrades to the product, but ultimately the nuts and bolts are what happens in the ring. The nuts and bolts are the stories that are being told here. And if your main story on the show is Rich Swann versus Tommy Dreamer, Not to say that they can't pull off a compelling story, because again, I don't necessarily have that much of a problem with the story being Rich Swann taking on the old veteran, and Tommy Dreamer isn't going to win. Rich Swann is going to retain there, and it builds him up as a champion. My concern is this the right story for right now? When you've potentially got these new people tuning in, if you've potentially got these new people watching on Twitch, and again, we don't have the Twitch numbers this week. If you can let me know about the Twitch numbers in the comments, that would be amazing. We don't know about right now if that's really the right story to be told. Is that the story that should be told right now? Because you need something that's going to hook them in. Now, I think ultimately we're going towards Rich Swann versus Kenny Omega, or Kenny Omega versus the Impact World Champion at Impact Rebellion. I mean, the Omega logo's on the Rebellion logo. We've spoken about that before. That's happening. Regardless if that's against Rich Swann or Moose, I don't know. For me, and some people might say this is hot shotting the angle, but for me, the story now is Rich Swann versus Moose. That's the story that needs to be told right now. It's the best story that Impact can deliver right now. They've been teasing it for months. They've been teasing it since Bound for Glory. That was in October. We're in February now. It just feels like that would be the story to tell right now. That would be the feud, the match to have right now, because if these new fans were tuning in to Impact on Tuesday and they see this feud between Moose and Rich Swann, that can be really compelling for a variety of reasons. You know, you've got two excellent wrestlers. You've got a diversity that you might not have in other companies. I mean, having Rich Swann versus Chris Bay in the main event of Final Resolution December was a groundbreaking moment, because it's the first time since Booker T versus The Rock in terms of a major promotion, you've had two people of black descent competing for a world championship. Impact Wrestling can smash boundaries that way. They can break glass ceilings. And again, if you've got new viewers tuning in to the show, that's going to hook them in. Wait, we're seeing something different. We're seeing something progressive, and we're seeing a great product too. I just don't think Rich Swann versus Tommy Dreamer, that's the story to be told right now. Especially given this new attention that the product's getting right now. And frankly, you know, you can look at other things in this rating as well this week, and the viewership this week, it has gone down. You can say once again, was the show that good this week? I think the answer was probably no. I mean, in terms of the recent shows coming out of Hard to Kill, the two shows that we've had coming out of Hard to Kill, was this an amazing show? I don't think it was. I don't think it was good as the last couple of weeks. I thought the show was fine, but in terms of being noteworthy and in terms of finishing the show and going, man, that was a really good show. Did we get that? No. Is that because we didn't get any surprises or reveals or anything shocking this week? Maybe, and you can't have that every week. I understand that. But I do think that this week's show, you know, the number probably reflects the quality of the show this week as well. Which is going to be interesting, because I think in the next couple of months, you know, we've got some big things on the horizon for Impact. As I mentioned, we've got No Surrender in a couple of weeks. We've got Impact Rebellion, which everyone's kind of buzzing about at the moment, but we don't know a lot about it. We don't have any matches confirmed. All we know is that Kenny Omega's probably going to be competing once again. So there's certainly going to be big things happening, but I think if Impact really wants to hit the big heights of setting records again on AXS TV, you know, let's be frank and honest about it, they need AEW's help. I think they need more promotion on AEW Dynamite. Whether or not they'll get that, I don't know. I don't know. Dynamite continues to do pretty well on Wednesday nights, considering they've got competition from NXT. This week they blew NXT out of the water, even with Edge on it, which to me was a real indication of how well and how strong their footprint is on Wednesday nights. And you just think, you know, if a fraction of the viewers came over from that Wednesday night to Tuesday night, then Impact Wrestling would be doing very, very well. So if I was Don Callis, if I was Scott D'Amore, if I was Ed Nordholm, I'd be saying to the guys at AEW, look, we really appreciate having Matt Hardy here and having Private Party, and we're more than happy to send the Good Brothers over and have Kenny Omega come over and send Don Callis over, but you know, would it kill you to say at least 1 point during Dynamite on Wednesdays, by the way, tune in to Impact Wrestling on AXS TV on Tuesdays, or Don Callis on the microphone, remind the viewers, tune in to Impact Wrestling on AXS TV on Tuesday, do a cliffhanger in it, say, the Good Brothers, they're going to have a surprise for you, but you've got to find out, tune in Tuesday, Impact Wrestling on AXS TV, or something of that nature. Something, even if it's Matt Hardy and Private Party on Wednesday nights. Even if Matt Hardy gets on the microphone and says, you know what, we've got something very, very interesting planned, but not for this audience, for the audience on Tuesday on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV. Just do something like that. Do something like that, because I think that alone would pique people's interest on a Wednesday night, and then that fraction of the audience that doesn't watch Impact Wrestling, they might say, you know what, I'll tune in. I wouldn't tune in usually, but why not? And I think that's maybe what Impact Wrestling needs again, because the Kenny Omega debut was great, but you have to look at the time period that it happened as well. It happened on December 8th, then we had the following week's episode, but after that we had 2 best-of episodes on December 22nd and December 29th. That's a lot of momentum lost. It was a lot of momentum lost, and it felt like, you know, it took a while to get Impact back up and running again. And maybe it's a case of they need that bump once again from AEW Dynamite on Wednesdays. Who knows? It certainly is something we're going to be paying very close attention to and continue to talk about here on the channel. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Impact Wrestling's ratings and viewership this week on AXS TV? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.